Hi, everybody. Um, I hope everybody is doing okay in this time. But I do want to talk about communication with the mentors, especially with your mentor leaders, Alex and Kirkland. And of course, all of you who are here on time, you're probably the wrong people to say this message to, because you have all done things. But some of the things that we're encountering, especially with the background check communication, and the picking up of the coloring book for Black composers. I was really hoping to get all of the coloring book for Black composers out to all of the mentors, and had the form available for you to fill out in terms of whether it should be mailed to your home address or you can be picked up. So, these kinds of communication, especially because we don't really have a set regular time, although kind of Mondays are falling into our regular time of meeting. It's really important that you respond in a timely manner, because that just creates a lot of extra work if you have to send out another email. If Alex is currently trying to distribute the coloring books. So it'd be great if she just has to do that once rather than coming back and coming back to multiple locations. That's just really not fair to ask of our leaders to repeat that process. So if either Alex or Kirkland sends out a message, please get back to them in a timely manner. When I send out a message, please do get back in a timely manner. Now, on the other hand, our partners or possible partners are also not being, and to be, as I told Kirkland and Alex, I'm a little flabbergasted at their lack of response or lack of interest, because I was a middle school music teacher once, and at that point, if somebody said, would you like some resources like mentors, I would have jumped at the chance. But I'm a little confused as to why there's such a lack of response to that. So we're going to try to figure out a way forward. But I think what I'm trying to do is have it so that you are getting something out of this experience this fall, being mentors. So one of the things I asked you to do was look at that intersectionality video, and then do the exercise of where you fall in your social identity, by your age, your body type, citizenship, disability or not ability, ethnicity, first language. So I kind of filled out my own and did my own map for you. I'm a middle-aged adult. I'm a little thick around the belly. I'm a US citizen. I'm a person without disabilities. My ethnicity is Korean American. My first language is Korean. I'm a male. I'm an Asian race, Christian, heterosexual, and then socioeconomic background is middle class. And so these different columns you are more aware of, you're less aware of, gives you power and privilege at Cornell University, and you like to know more about. So all of you should be going through this exercise because as we think about different intersectionalities, how we relate to people from different backgrounds, different identification becomes really important. So one of the exercises I would like to do is I'm going to put you guys into breakout rooms of pairs and share a story about privilege that you've experienced, and share the opposite side of that coin, where you were on the other side of not being part of that privileged class, right? So until recently, so I'll sort of do my version, and then you can sort of model it from mine. Okay, so I'm going to share a experience where I had as a person in a privileged position, and then another from the opposite side, right? So for a long time, I never gave a second thought about when students asked me, what should we call you? And sort of my response was, oh, just call me Chris, because I really hated sort of that a power dynamic and hierarchy of professor and doctor and Mr. or whatever. So I just made it, I was most comfortable interacting with students with just on a first name basis, because I felt that made it more personal, I was sort of getting rid of that wall between the instructor and the student. Because if you know about my teaching, I'm all about sort of thinking about not that top-down approach from the traditional conductor down to the orchestra member, but we are in it together to realize the composer's intention. So I'm on the same side as the orchestra. But what I hadn't considered was the effect of me as a male person interacting with students on this very first name basis, and how that that transactional relationship actually can undermine somebody who's of a different gender. And as you know from many studies that demonstrates, when a female professor comes into a classroom, there are many, many layers of discrimination that she has to fight through, ranging from the clothing she chooses, the shoes that she chooses to wear, whether she has makeup or not, whether she decides to allow her students to call her by her first name, right? So I hadn't considered a lot of these things. So when I walk into Lincoln Hall, I'm usually in like a very comfortable, this is kind of like this, for me, this is dressed up. Right? I don't have to think about makeup. I don't have to think about wearing shoes. I usually walk in with my hiking shoes. And I don't think anything of that, because that doesn't play into the role of having to establish myself as a person of authority in a classroom. But that very nature of not thinking about it is actually privilege, right? So, so I had to really reconsider my decision to have students call me by my first name, right? So that's something I'm struggling through right now, where I realized unknowingly, without realizing, I was undermining my female colleagues, who are faculty members, right? So that's an example of an issue of privilege, where I'm from a position of privilege, where it doesn't really occur to me that there was a problem. In a similar way, you might have similar stories about you're in the position of privilege, and then how you thought about that issue, or you haven't thought about that issue, and how it affected that those around you, right? So that'll be an example. And then you can also share an example where you're on the other side of the coin, right? So as an immigrant, when I move into a new situation, oftentimes the unveiled question that's asked is, oh, where are you from? And so, no, where are you really from? So that kind of thing I've had to deal with in a number of different places, right? Whether it be Quincy, Illinois, which is very rural, where in a town of 40,000, I was maybe one of 3 Korean Americans, right? Where I would walk through the mall, and a 5-year-old child had never seen an Asian American man. So they're sort of looking at me open mouthed and sort of, to living in Los Angeles and New York, where it's a very diverse population, where nobody thinks twice about an Asian person walking through New York City or Los Angeles. So these are 2 examples, right? So what I would ask you to do right now, just quickly, you have, I'm gonna give you about 4 minutes, okay? And so you pair up with another person and you tell your experience as a person coming from a position of privilege, and then on the other side, okay? So I'll send you to the breakout room. And we have 2, 4, 6, 8. So I'll do 1, 2, 3, 4 rooms. All right, here we go. I'll give you 4 minutes. Go.
How's it going, Chris?
Yeah, I'm gonna be just jumping around the rooms to see the conversation.
Okay. So, Who wants to begin?
Kirkland, why don't you go first?
Why do I have to begin?
You're a leader, sir.
Okay, fine. So you wanted to talk about our experiences going through who we are. Okay, well one really interesting thing.
Pick one of the identities, right? And then talk about whether you're coming from a position of privilege or not.
So I think the concept of race is really interesting to me because, especially at Cornell, like you're not going to hear this from a lot of people, but like I think it's worth sharing because it's a perspective that many people haven't heard. But at Cornell, we live in an environment where we talk about how race can be an issue for some people. But one really powerful thing that I've experienced was that my parents never told me that race was an issue, and they didn't teach me this concept that white people had it better, that they had more. They didn't teach me that like Asians were smarter. They didn't show that to me. So when I would go to school, and like my parents didn't go to high school and they didn't go to college, so like I didn't have what a lot of other people had. I didn't have that privilege of like having my parents know how to do a lot of things. Like from third grade on, they really didn't know anything that I was doing in terms of science or math or English or anything. Their English was really bad. So I was on my own. But they didn't tell me that I was less or that it was harder for me. So one really interesting thing was that because even though it was harder, even though I didn't have the privilege compared to other people, because they never told me that, I grew up my entire life never knowing that, and I found myself here. And I wonder, this is like, I don't know if this is an easy conversation, but it's very interesting. I wonder if talking about an issue actually could make it worse, because I didn't tell myself, oh, other people had it better. I didn't tell myself, oh my God, it's really hard for me. I just assumed that I was on the same level as every other white kid. But the problem with that statement is that I didn't tell myself I was the same as every other white kid. I never told myself anything because that was never an issue that was discussed. My difficulty compared to other people's difficulty. And I found myself here without ever having to deal with that issue. And I can look back on it now and say that it was a little difficult, but I wonder, like, if we tell people that they have an issue or that it could be harder or easier for them, could that affect how they behave in the world? I don't know. You guys
sort of like
something about
telling the orchestra, oh, this is really easy, when in fact it's a really hard piece, right? So the orchestra doesn't know any better, that kind of. Dylan and Ella, why don't you respond and I'll check in another room.
Actually, yeah, I'm actually kind of curious. What do you guys think?
I just remember, so I have really big hair. This is just like a very specific example, but because I grew up in a majority white, um, I, I had all white friends. I went to a all-white school. I remember feeling so ashamed of like my big curly hair that I wanted to like dye it straight. Like, people around me would like ask questions about it and want to touch it and pull on it, and they would ask questions about my parents, and it was just, I remember I used to feel so ashamed about it when I was younger. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess I also was in a majority white neighborhood. I guess I never felt like included in any of this stuff. But like my family was also really private. So when I would see like the moms talking about like, I don't know, I felt like they had another way of life.
Yeah, and I feel the same. It was like I was looking into like I was like looking in from like the outside on these like interactions with like white parents or just like white students in general, because I went to like an all-white school and I was the only Asian there.
Mm-hmm. I guess when we think of American people, we always think of white people. Whenever I tell my mom like about a white friend, I just call them an American person.
Yeah, my son, who is um, Korean heritage, but like he thinks of himself as white, right? So he's always like trying to say, well, but I'm white. I'm not Korean. So because he's exposed to a situation where he sees just white kids and not many Asian kids. Yeah. I'm gonna go help Eric before. Okay. Hi, Sarah.
Hi. My
Yep.
partner like got kicked out or something, and I'm not able to leave the breakout room. I'm like, it only has like the leave meeting option.
Okay. Let me
Yeah.
move you to. Okay. I think they got disconnected. So I will move you to room. Um, Actually, I'm gonna end it pretty soon.
hmm
You want to just share with me, and then we can do the exercise.
Oh, okay. Um, for privilege, I was just thinking about for the college application process, I didn't have to worry at all about how many schools I could apply to for financial reasons, and that wasn't even something I considered. I was like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna apply to all these schools, and then I had friends or I was talking to people, and I found out that that was something like figuring out waivers and their things. So that was kind of eye-opening for me.
Yeah.
And then I think the other side of that would be I wasn't sure whether or not I should put down that I'm Jewish on my college applications because I just heard from people that there are readers that are anti-Semitic, like it's something that can hurt you.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure if that's something that would put me at a disadvantage if I wrote it on my application.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a absolutely the perfect example of somebody if they're from a privileged background, they don't even have to think about it, right? They don't have to think
Right.
about well, I'm not. Am I going to put that I'm white because it's just not an issue, right? Yeah, absolutely. So it's and oftentimes when so for example males, it usually just as I didn't think about the first name sort of issue, they the exact position of privilege allows them to actually not think about an issue. But from on the opposite side, if you're on the opposite side of that coin, it becomes okay. This might actually prevent me from going to the college of my choice, right? So, but if you're on the privileged side of that coin, you just don't understand what that is like.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Great. All right. I'm gonna bring everybody back to the main. So here we go.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
So, Chris, you're muted.
Yeah, Chris, I was about to say that you're muted.
Also, your son is so cute. I haven't seen him so long.
It automatically mutes me, so I'm sorry. So what I would love for everybody to do is just share briefly your reflection on the conversations that happened. Any new ideas that you got exposed to, or any ideas of like, yep, I've experienced that, things like that.
In my group specifically, we talked about like being a US citizen and also having English speaking backgrounds because it's easier for us to go in and out of states. Anna brought up like how easy it was for her to move from country to country with her US passport. And then I talked about how being a native English speaker here at Cornell might have been easier compared to people who are international students who are unable to like, who had to learn English as their second language.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we also discussed along those same lines the sort of Asian American experience. And in my own personal opinion, being an Asian in STEM is probably much easier than being of another race or ethnicity in that field, because it's just common to see a lot of Asians within that sort of coursework and whatnot. And on the flip side, there's of course still racism and all that, and I've experienced some various racism here and there, you know, in sports and elsewhere. So that's the opposite side to it.
I would love for all of us just to say a little bit.
I guess we talked about how we all felt privileged going to like Cornell, just like going to this institution and having the opportunities here.
Yawen?
Oh, something going off of what Colin said is that like I feel like in school, if you're Asian or Black, you don't learn as much about people who look like you and their role in like history and stuff. So you don't see a lot of representation of yourself.
Yeah, I was 12 when I came to the States, and then in junior high, my favorite class was political science and U.S. history. But all the heroes and the important people were, you know, George Washington and MacArthur, and even in talking about the Korean War, it was all from the point of view of General MacArthur rather than anybody from South Korea, and of course not from North Korea. So that process was really jarring for me, because I did have education in Korea in elementary school, where I learned about Korean history and European history, US history, all sort of from, in a way, that perspective. But to come to the US and all of a sudden have only sort of white perspective, even as a young person, I was really well aware of that. And then I see my son, who's going through the school system now as a 6th grader, and he pretty much says, "What do you mean? I'm not Korean. I'm white." He's like, "No, you're not white." So, but that's because he's sort of exposed in that way only. Ella?
We spent a lot of time talking about Kirkland's experience.
Well,
like
Kirkland's a talker, so.
What?
Kirkland is a talker, so.
Okay, well, he is calling me out right now, but he made me go first.
But we were like discussing whether potentially like discussing race to in terms of like white people have it easier could potentially like discourage people who are like minorities or who are disadvantaged by just like, I guess, I don't know. I feel like Kirkland can explain it better, but he said that the way he was raised, his parents didn't talk about like how it would be easier for a white person to like, I guess, like get into Cornell or something like that. And how when he came to Cornell, there was kind of, it was very different in terms of how Cornell is discussing like how race will play into different academic areas or otherwise.
Yeah, I think it's important when we're discussing these ideas is that the usual trap that we all fall into, whether we're coming from a privileged background or from on the other side of the coin, is that you don't have to define the way you have been pigeonholed, or that conversation doesn't have to be one-sided all the time, right? You can also widen your perspective, widen your viewpoints, so that you're not only relying on one perspective, right? And I think that's the important thing to gain from having the understanding of different definitions of who we are and how that really skews your viewpoint, right? So as people who should be more aware of another person and really trying to dialogue with another person, you're really trying to understand where another person is coming from, especially from a mentee or mentee's family, if they're coming from a different background than yours, right? So you have to be careful about your assumptions that you bring into inevitably because of who you are and how you're defined and your experience culminating to this point in your life. There's just going to be certain things that you're going to carry into that conversation relationship, right? So if you're aware of them, then you're more likely to be more sensitive or not make the same trope type mistakes that somebody who is from a privileged background, and they're not really thinking about whatever it might be, whether it be cost of applying to a college, whether it be thinking about your interaction with a student, or the fact that if you're a male, you've really never thought about career or family. Where for women, that is a huge subject that you need to encounter and go through at one point, right? But not in the same way that males do. Males just don't think about, when males are given the option of, all right, what is your career trajectory going to look like? How they calculate and balancing family life just never goes into that equation. And I think hopefully your generation will be more balanced in how you think about work-life balance, right? Where women are not the only ones thinking and worrying and stressed about that work-life balance, whereas the men are completely oblivious to anything that related to that family life work balance, right? And I come from a generation where it was normal for a male to not think about housework, period, right? And so when I went into a relationship, I wanted to make sure that I was also contributing. But even as I thought that, so many balances were so off because one, I don't have to carry a child to term. So that impact of carrying a child to term has on a woman's career is probably 10, 15 times, right? So, so these are all things you have to think about in terms of, if you come from a position of privilege, just by that definition, you don't think about it, right? So, and that's a sign you're from a position of privilege, right? So the more we're able to dialogue with somebody who's different than you, in terms of whatever definition of background, right? Whether it be male, race, gender, class, socioeconomic background, whatever the category might be, it is really important for us to be able to look at another point of view and think about the impact that has, right? Okay, so I'm gonna send the agenda to you, but there are a couple things in the agenda that I wanna share with you. Here we go. So tomorrow, the Engaged Cornell grant is going to be, not that one, no, not that one, this one. There is a grant for students. If you have already been engaged with mentoring, so from this mainly applies to students who have mentees from last year, and you would like to continue that mentor-mentee relationship over the winter break, then you can apply for this. So I would really encourage you to do so. If you don't have a mentee yet, then you might have to wait for another time. But if you already have a mentee, like Kirkland does, or somebody else, then you can apply for this grant. Now, the rolling deadline is starting on November 3rd, and I'll put this link in the document. But I would really encourage, if you're going to apply, that you apply early rather than later. So I think by mid or early December, the funding for this program will probably run out, because it's not going to be an unlimited source. So of course, you'll need time to put together the application. I'll be happy to read that and sort of give you comments. So if you're interested in applying for this, do let Alex, Kirkland, and me know that you're interested in doing that. Okay. There are two more opportunities that I want you to be aware of. Aaron Dworkin, who was one of our speakers for the CS Online, is a keynote speaker next Friday at the Society for Arts Entrepreneurship Education Annual Conference. These are happening over the next 2 Fridays. Last Friday, there was the first day. Basically, it starts 1 p.m. Eastern, goes till about 4. And on November 6th, Aaron is a keynote speaker. But there are many, many sessions on all kinds of entrepreneurship. So one of the things I'm really trying to get you guys to think about is this field of arts when most people think about a career in music, they can't just imagine that because I'm an engineer. That's not something I would do. But if you, as all the time, I'm trying to connect back to anything I talk about musically or anything I talk about for mentorship. I'm trying to make connections to whatever your field is, right? So all of these sessions that are often in entrepreneurship, actually the main speaker on the first Friday was a business person, an MBA person. So a lot of these sessions are really valuable. If anybody is willing to wanting to attend this, I will pay for your student conference fee of $25, and you can take part as much as you want, or just one session or two sessions, but I'm willing to pay for that conference fee, which is $25. Okay, just let me know if you're interested in taking part. We already have about three students from the orchestra taking part in that. Okay. The only thing I would sort of ask is, once you attend and I've paid for your conference fee, then I would ask you to sort of write about the experience and reflect upon it. Okay. The next one is it's a conference in February. It's Sphinx Connect. And it's unclear whether this will be an online session or a in-person session. If it becomes an in-person session, then it gets a little more tricky to attend, but they will be broadcasting all of the sessions, right? But if you're interested in taking part in the Sphinx Connect, which has a lot of similar entrepreneurship type, but more arts and education events. And this is really for future administrators. So one of the things that I'm really trying to let you know of is how to engage with the arts community, not just as a performer, not just as an educator, but as perhaps an art administrator. And there is a lot of need for that. So if anybody's interested in attending that, I will also pay for the conference fee as well. Okay, so do let me know that you're interested in doing that. So those are the three opportunities that I wanted to let you know: the Cornell Engaged Grant, the Arts Entrepreneurship Fridays next Friday, and then the Friday after, and then the Sphinx Connect conference in February. Okay. Please communicate with Alex in terms of getting the coloring book for Black composers, if you haven't already, so that she doesn't have to come to multiple places, right? I'm really trying to minimize the amount of time she has to sort of be out handing out material. Okay.
By the way, I'll be at CTB this Friday from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. So if you want to swing by to grab coffee and your coloring book, if you ordered one, just let me know.
All right. I sent out another communique to Mark Lewis about mentoring program with us, and I will wait to hear from them. So again, I'm at a loss as to why they are not getting back to us in terms of engaging with you guys. If it was me, I would love for my son to be mentored by an amazing Cornell student, but I guess I'm just weird that way. All right, that's all the time I have. I have to jump to another meeting. So thanks everybody, stay safe.
Thank you.
Okay, Chris, I'll see you in the next meeting for orchestra.
Oh, you guys have another meeting after this?
Yeah, we have our board meeting.
Okay. Okay, bye. I'll see you soon.